Hey friends, it's Dwight. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day. So I wanted to take a few moments to talk a little bit about the dump and swirl. Now I did this painting you're about to see a couple of days ago, and I am very happy the way it turned out. But there are a couple of things I want to make a note and make sure that you think about when you're doing a dump and swirl. First of all, I did use Artist Loft Soft Body Black, but I used it from a date that was produced probably back in June or July of last year. Now, earlier this year, I was doing dump and swirls with a later date. I think there was some in December, and that wasn't working very well. The cells were stifled. Nothing was really coming up. It was very, very frustrating. So I did go around to several Michaels a few months back, and I did pick up a few bottles of the older production date I have some for June and some for July. I only have like 4 bottles. So I did pull one of those out, and I used July to create this piece of painting that you're going to see in a little bit. So I wanted to talk also about the dump and swirl, because I think it's a really fun process. It's one of my favorites. It's one of my signature pieces. I do them over and over again if you watch my videos. So Melly D started doing this a few years back, quite a few years back, actually about 5 or 6 years ago. And when I was getting into acrylic pouring, I came across her videos, and I was so impressed that she was very experimental with using just water, paint, and a drizzle of Liquitex pouring medium. She wasn't using Floetrol at the time. So I liked her dump and swirl. She has a handful of those paintings out there, and I jumped on top of that, and I sort of made it my own and have my own signature to that. So it's really, really important to think about, like, how do we mix our paints? So the thing that I do, and I want to remind you of, is that a formula, at least for me with the dump and swirl, is a suggestion. It's a guideline. It doesn't have to be so precise, but it's typically 1 part paint, 2 to 3 parts Floetrol, a drizzle of Liquitex pouring medium, and then water. The most important part about the dump and swirl is the consistency. You have to get the consistency right. So if you think about it, when you're putting down the color paints or the puddles, that consistency has to be a little bit thinner than the black or the dump paint, because you want it to move over the canvas. You want the black to cover the color so that you can get the cells to pop up through that. So when you watch my video, watch how the black paint goes over the colored puddles, and then how the cells come up when it's sort of, I left it alone for a little bit, and it sort of, I don't know what to call it, percolates. And so the cells start to form. The other thing to think about is the brands of paints. Now, I use craft paints. I know I've heard some people say craft paints aren't very good, but let me tell you, for my dump and swirls, they work really, really well. And the paints I typically use are Deco Arts Americana, also Dazzling Metallics by Deco Arts. I've used Arteza, both the metallics and their regular paints. And I've also used Folk Art. I haven't used Goldens or Liquitex Basics, like their hard body paints. Well, I should take that back. I have used them, but they're harder to work with, and I haven't had as much success, to be quite honest with you. So look at my list here. The other thing to think about, I had to write some stuff down, I had so many things to say, is that please strain your paints. Now, the painting you're about ready to see, I did pour it, but I had so many lumps in my black paint that I didn't see when I was stirring it up. And so as I was tilting, I tried to remove some of them, but there were too many. The thinner the paints got over my canvas, the more showed up, and it started to sort of create those caterpillars and sort of dragging on my canvas. So I scraped it. So what you'll see is the start of a new canvas, same colors, but it was from a scraped previous pour. The other thing I wanted to say is, know how many ounces you need to put on the canvas. I do have a chart, and you can send me a message, or you can send me an email at dwightpours@yahoo.com. Be more than happy to send that to you. It just maps out how much you need to cover the canvas. And if you're using a thicker edge canvas, you need to add a little bit more. So when I do dump and swirls, I think about, like, so in the canvas that I'm doing today, it was a 24 by 30 canvas. It took about 25 ounces to cover the entire canvas, not taking into account the edges that are about 1.5 inches thick. So I did mix just shy of 24 ounces of color. I used 6 4-ounce cups, and then I used a 16-ounce cup to mix my black paint in. I had plenty of paint to take into account, tilting it off the corners and edges. So just some things to think about. You don't want too much paint, and again, you don't want too little paint. And finding the right amount, you have to play with it a little bit, but once it works, you got it made. Okay, friends, that was a lot. I hope I covered everything on my list. Let me check. Yes, everything was covered, so it looks pretty good. So listen, sit back. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the notes below, or again, you can email me at dwightpours@yahoo.com. Okay, friends, we'll see you in a second. Okay, friends, here we are. Paints are all mixed. I'm going to be pouring on this 24 by 30 canvas. So let me show you close up the paints I'm going to be using. This red here is called Deep Red, and it is an Artist Loft paint. Then I have Liquitex Basics, this beautiful copper color. And next to that, I have this light blue. It's called Shoreline, and it is by Deco Arts Americana. And then next to that is another Deco Arts Americana brand paint, and it's called Calypso Blue, and it's like a turquoise color. Now I have two whites here, and the first white is White Pearl by Dazzling Metallics, and the second white is just white Artist Loft Soft Body White. And there's my dump paint, the Artist Loft Soft Body Black, and the date on this bottle is July of last year. So I've been using some older bottles recently to get some great results. So here we go. Okay guys, here I am. Now listen, I tried to do a pour on the canvas. As you can see, I've scraped it because I didn't strain my black paint. So make sure you strain your black paint sometimes to get all the bumps out. So I scrapped it and I started over. So I started with the white. I always like to put white down as a base coat and then build on top of that. I think with some of your paints, if they're transparent or semi-transparent, it allows for better reflection of the color coming through. So I started with the blues, as you can see here. And I'm not doing a dump of the paint, like I'm not throwing the paint down. I'm just pouring it lightly on top of each other. Now I'm putting another barrier between my red and copper, so I put another layer of white. And then we add the copper. Now, like I said, I'm pouring nice and slowly. So now we're going to go ahead and pour the red on top. So these are 4-ounce cups. I had, what, 6 of those, I believe, so it's about 24 ounces of paint. And my dump paint, the black, is in a 16-ounce cup. So plenty of paint to cover the canvas over the edges and the corners. So I'm just taking a moment to make sure it's all mixed nice and smooth before I dump it. And again, I'm pouring this very slowly. It almost looks like it's in slow motion. But I think sometimes when you do it more slowly, you can avoid some of the dispersion of the colors underneath, which might create not too many cells or too big of a negative space. It really just depends. And I wish I had the best answer for you on that. Okay, here we go. So what's good about doing these pours, and something to think about, is that you want the black to cover your colors the best you can. As you can see over the corner, then I bring it back over the other corner. I sort of pull it back a little bit towards the center and then bring it back over that corner and then one more corner to get over. Now you can see the speckles on the edge there. That's usually a good indication that I'm going to have some pearls or some cells. And then once I get it over that last corner, I bring it back a little bit just to kind of bring the paint towards the center. And I move it around, sort of lift it up and down to get some of the bubbles to come up. Now, I'll be honest with you, at this point I was thinking, I'm not really sure what is going to happen here. I almost felt like scraping it again, but I said, no, let's just, see what happens and maybe just torch it and let it sit. So I'm tapping it on the ground to get some of the bubbles up. Sometimes when I do that, it allows for the color underneath to come up, like the cells or the pearls to come up. Okay, friends, so I am going to stop for here, and I want you to watch. I did get up and leave the room, and I was very happy when I came back. And after a while here, I'll take you on a dry walkthrough. Hey guys, here I am. Now this is the next day. I let the painting dry overnight because I wanted to see, to make sure there was no more movement and to make sure that things didn't kind of go wonky, which sometimes happens in the drying process when I do a dump and swirl. I really love this because the contrast of the light blue and the white against the stark black, it looks like it's glowing. I find it interesting that the red and the copper didn't come through. I'll show you in a second. I see it mostly around the edges. Now, I wish I had a little bit more coverage over here, but overall, you know, it's beautiful. The composition and the color really make it look light and beautiful. So let me just show you these pearls or cells up close. I just think they're very interesting looking. Again, there's the black paint and the starkness against that looks great. And there's nothing to clean up in the negative space. You know, if you've watched my videos in the past, I go back in and just sort of touch up some of the speckles that might be in the negative space and maybe dot the center of the cells. But there's no need to do that because they're bright enough. You know, they're circular and they're bright enough in the negative space for me to keep it the way it is. So, sorry, I'm trying to get it to focus here. Yeah, I think I was really happy. I have to be honest with you. I mentioned earlier in the video here that I almost scraped it again because nothing was coming up. Just a few of the color, like some of the lighter colors were coming up. And I was just thinking, ugh, and I was so frustrated. I left the room and let it sit for like an hour and a half. And I came back in and I was pleasantly surprised. Again, it looked exactly like this, but it was just wet and shiny. So just think how that might look once it's varnished. Yeah, it just looks like it's glowing. I think it's beautiful. Okay, friends, that's enough talking for now. Yeah, we're gonna do another painting maybe tomorrow. So you guys have a great rest of your day and we'll see you real soon.